Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. He's talking to today's industry leaders and entrepreneurs about the people side of their business. Hi everyone, Kristen Calloway here. I help produce the Best Team Wins podcast, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We have Melissa Ryan here. She's the head of the people team at Hireology. Melissa's been with Hireology for over 3 years and has helped grow the team from 40 to nearly 140. And next year, she'll be growing the team to almost 170. So a lot of high growth in a short amount of time. And before heading up the people team at Hireology, Melissa worked for hypergrowth Chicago startup Groupon in its early days. She's hired thousands of people during her career and has seen it all. So today I'm discussing with her how to measure recruiting effectiveness. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for that intro.
Oh, of course. So to break the ice, I'll first ask you, what is your favorite interview question?
So the one question that I really like to ask every candidate is a pretty standard interview question, but I like to ask, what is one thing that you're really proud of thus far in your professional career? And I like to ask that question because if you really get to know the candidate and you get to understand a little bit more about like what makes them tick, what motivates them, and just like what, really drives them.
Great. So we're digging in here. The first step in anything is, what is the process? What is the process at Hireology? Like, what are the steps that you take to get somebody in the door?
Yeah, so for every role, it truly is customized, and thanks to like our own software, we're really able to customize the hiring steps for each of our open roles. But for each position, our standard process is when we're opening a role to sit down with a hiring manager, either myself or the recruiter on my team, Jordan, and we really dive into, the role, what they're looking for, what are the key skills or the key, experience that they're looking for. And we use that to really drive, our search, not only as we're going through resumes, but also as we're passively sourcing candidates. So that really helps kind of lay the groundwork, as we kind of kick off our process. So our standard process for each role would be, the recruiter or myself will do a phone screen. That's, the goal of that conversation is really to get a high level understanding of someone's background. But, also it's really important here at Hireology that we hire, every person that we hire is a fit with our core values. And so we also use that phone screen to really get a sense of their core value fit as well. Following the phone screen, we would typically bring them in for an on-site interview. And, when we set up the hiring process, we like to identify at least 2 people that they can meet with in the office, either for a 30 or 45-minute interview, just depending on the level of the role. And then following that, we typically will do references, a Caliper assessment, and schedule with the founder and CEO, Adam Robinson.
Great. Okay, so first question, just so that we all have terms defined. What is passive sourcing?
Yep, passive sourcing is, basically reaching out to candidates that don't know that they want this job. So I think of passive candidates of, you can find them on LinkedIn, through networking. A lot of recruiters will, can cold call into companies. But basically, I think of it as filling the top of your funnel with candidates that, maybe aren't actively on the job market or haven't actively applied to your job.
Got it. So not someone that's seen your posting and gone through the typical application process, but somebody that you're reaching out to and grabbing.
Yep, exactly.
Another term, what is a Caliper assessment? What's that for?
Yeah, so a Caliper assessment is one of the vendor partners here at Hireology. And ultimately, there's different types of calipers, but they're very role specific. And it measures all, different sorts of things like accountability, time management, communication, conflict management, things that vary role to role. And it helps you measure someone's like preferences and strengths as it benchmarks to that position. Gotcha. So it's just I would say like a tool that we use as a part of our hiring process, but not something that, like a pass fail. It just is one tool, that we use throughout our process.
So is it like a personality test or?
Yeah, I wouldn't really consider a personality assessment. I mean, those I think are pretty controversial, but, I like to think of calipers as really more, like grounded in like the work that they do and where their strengths lie.
Okay. Gotcha. you guys are known for filling your open positions with top talent at like warp speed. How do you do that? What are you measuring to make sure that you're on track and that you're going to get all of these things done in the amount of time you need to get them done by?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hireology as a company has provided a really great framework for accountability. So one thing I think that we really hold ourselves accountable to is a set number of phone screens on a weekly basis. And we do shoot for, I would say, 20 phone screens each week. When we are going through high volume hiring like we are right now with, around 20 open roles, that number will increase. But I think it really boils down, to the ability to hire that quickly, to time management and making sure that you have, a really, strong organizational process. And, I work with Jordan on this. It's really whatever works best for you. I'm very old school with my approach of having like written on a, within my notebook, a list of candidates each week that I'm talking to, just to make sure that, I'm following up with each person. That's really important. But in order to make sure that you're hiring people, quickly, I think of it as like aligning to our business goals. So, we want to make sure that we're hiring quickly, but hiring the right people. And I think it boils down to making sure you have funnel metrics. So it's almost like, if you think of it as like a sales funnel or a sales pipeline, it's very similar. If you review on a weekly basis the number of candidates that are, actively applying, and then the number or percentage that are being passed to phone screen, and so on and so forth, all the way through your pipeline or through your process, to hire. So we track and measure and report on that on a weekly basis. If there is an area of the funnel that's looking light, we always want to supplement that with the passive recruiting.
Gotcha. So the top of your funnel would be people that are applying for the job, right?
Yep.
So
active applicants.
Okay. And then from there, that'll funnel down into people that you want to have a conversation over the phone with.
Yep.
And then you'll move them on to the hiring manager. And then if they make it through that process, you want them to talk to the CEO, right?
Yep, exactly.
Got it. And then, so is the final part of the process the reference check and Caliper tests and all of that?
Yeah, so we actually start to process that before the final call with Adam. We just want to make sure that we have kind of all of our ducks in a row. And Adam is still so gracious to, make the time to speak with each candidate that we bring on board. It's really important to him. And, I have so much respect that he continues to do that. So we want to make sure that we, are lining up the people that we fully intend on extending an offer to, just to make the best use of his time.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you're measuring the velocity, does everything start with the number of applicants, or how do you make sure that you're going to hit your number?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily, we don't have a set goal for each, for all, like blanket across every single open position for the number of applicants that we want to see. It's more of a visual that you can use to just make sure that you're on track to hitting your hiring goals. For example, if, next week, if our VP of sales comes to me and says, our, sales interviews are really light, what's going on, I can refer back to our sales recruiting funnel and say, applicants have been really down, and then work backwards from there to make sure our jobs are posted in the right places and to make sure that we are, hitting our passive sourcing numbers so we can have our strongest candidate pipeline.
Gotcha. So that's like the thing that you can actively do and control is if you don't have enough applicants and you're at the top of the funnel, you can go out and find them on LinkedIn or what have you.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a really exciting story to tell here at Hireology with our culture and our high growth. So we love passive recruiting because we are a Chicago-based company. Not all of our roles are based in Chicago. We have a pretty enticing story to tell candidates, and we are reaching out to them on why it is so great to work here.
So speaking of the fact that not all of our jobs are in Chicago, what's recruiting for a remote position like?
Yeah, so our remote process is, a bit different. We still follow, the same, pieces of the process on the front end with meeting with the hiring manager, really going through the requisition. I would do the phone screen for those roles. And then, We do video interviews or Zoom interviews for all of our remote folks. So, we're very fortunate here at Hireology to have, strong, tools and technology to help support our remote team. And that was, I think a very intentional decision as we built out the remote team in order for it to work. We had to have the right tools in place. So we do typically a set of, for our technical roles, they would have three video conversations. One would be with, the tech leads, followed by a conversation with our head of engineering. And then if that all goes well, we would schedule for a team meet and greet. Since that team is remote and culture is so important to the company, we want, our remote team to, basically have a chance to meet the team that they're going to be meeting with, since they're not able to come into the office and do like an office tour and get a sense of the culture in the office.
Gotcha. That's really interesting, the meet and greet with the team. Does that have any bearing on a decision, or is it just sort of so everybody gets to know each other?
It really is so everyone gets to know each other. In my time here, we maybe have had, one or two people that have had some red flags come up, during their meet and greet, and if it boiled down to if that person was not, if we felt like they were not a core value fit, if those concerns were raised during the meet and greet, and if they were not a core value fit, we would have to consider at that point. But it's, just one tool that we use as a part of our hiring process.
Something a little bit different. How has recruiting changed from when you started to today?
It's changed. It's so much. I'm smiling saying that. When I first started, we were 40 people, and I started right as we were closing our Series B round of funding. And so it was like off to the races, and it was so much fun. But I would say our product has changed so much. So, now the fact that we're able to actually customize the interviews, within our software, everything down to like tracking and reporting, within our software, just a lot more efficient.
The candidates and what they want, has that changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, now, especially in Chicago, that, the tech scene and the startup scene is, so huge here. It's really competitive for top talent. And, I think both on the company, on our decision-making side, but also for candidates, they're really looking for, a mission that they can identify with so they can feel really proud of the work that they're doing. So that's one thing that I find is really important, that, people want to align with the work that they're doing. But also, culture is so important now as well. We spend so much time at work. People want to enjoy what they're doing, where they're working at and the people that they're working with.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering those questions. Okay. And I have one last question for you.
Of course.
At the end of the day, what is the number one thing that you can do to make sure you're getting the best person for the job in the role as quickly as possible?
The one thing that I think is most important is to hold yourself and your team accountable to having, a consistent hiring process that you can track and measure, so you can stay ahead of any like pipeline or funnel issues that I mentioned earlier. The worst case would be, you're, 2 to 3 weeks into recruiting for a role and you realize you have a top of the funnel issue, that will double your time to hire. So it's why we are, it's really important to us that we are tracking and reporting on that on a regular basis, and reporting that, not only for our own benefit, but also to the hiring managers and to our leadership team, so they know where everything is at, just so, we can really take a team approach at making sure, that our funnel is strong.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining me on the Best Team Wins podcast. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
And that's a wrap for us today. We'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. You can find out more information about Adam and his book, The Best Team Wins, Building Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, at thebestteamwins.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.